Hey guys, sorry I'm not there with you today. Hopefully you're already getting the class period off to a good start. Here's what you should have done already. You should have grabbed your Chromebook, logged into Desmos, but then you shouldn't have started today's Desmos, which is going to be the one titled Bumpers. You should have just turned your screen toward the front of the room, and you're going to leave it like that for the duration of this video, and then you can work on bumpers afterwards. You should have received your quiz that you took last week back already graded, and that should be in front of you right now. If you weren't here to take the quiz last week, then your name is on this paper that's on the screen right now. And I need you to take that quiz during this class period. So for first period, that's just JJ, and you should be able to go with Mr. Turner to take care of that. There was no one in third period that needs to make up the quiz, so that's great. Fourth period, Lee, you should go over to Miss Zavala's room, get yourself a copy of the quiz, any notes you want to look at while you take the quiz, no calculators though, and just go over to Miss Zavala's room. And then if you're in fifth period, Eric, Gilda, Shariah, Aya, the four of you should get copies of the quiz and head on over to the library. Miss Smith is expecting you there. Again, you can take whatever notes you want to look at, but no calculators. And please make sure to sit separately in the library. You guys should all be taking your own individual quiz. Bring that quiz back by the end of the period, give it to the substitute, and hopefully he'll leave it somewhere where I can find it very easily to grade them when I come back tomorrow. Okay, so for the rest of us, do me a favor, pause this video if there's still students that need to make up the quiz before you press go, because now I'm going to go through the answers. All right, assuming the room is only people who have taken the quiz now. Your score should be right here on the paper. It's out of 24 points with a possible 27 if you got all 3 points on the extra credit questions. Let's go through the answers real quick and talk about how they were graded. I wonder if we can focus this a little better. Maybe turn the light on. All right, so the first question was, what is the sum of all these cards here? If you add those up, let's see here, -8 and -2 make -10. 2 and 9 make 11. You add -10 and 11, you should have got a 1. So I was looking for a 1 somewhere on this paper, and I gave you 1 point for that. Then you pick up a 5, and you got to determine which of these 4 cards you should discard in order to get your score closest to 0. And I was not only looking for the fact that you should have chosen 9 as the card to discard, but that you somehow showed me really thoroughly that you know that's the best choice. The best way was to show me all the different options. Maybe if you wanted to show me what would happen if you discarded 9, you would say, okay, well, -8 plus -2 plus +2 plus 9 equals -3. And then if you did that for all the other 3 options as well, I believe the answers you get for each one of those is 14, 8. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I hope I don't get any of them wrong. 14, 8, and 4 are what the other 3 options come out to be. And so -3 is the closest out of those. If you wrote me a handwritten, like, sort of logical argument of why your choice was the best, if you did a really good job on that, you got 4 points. If there was something wrong with the logic or it wasn't very thorough, then you didn't get the total points. But overall, this question was worth 4 points for making the correct decision of, wait, I'm just now realizing this should be a 5 here. It's not a 9. Ooh, sorry if that confused anybody. -8 plus -2 plus 2 plus 5 equals -3. That's if you discarded the 9. Sorry. But if you did this question well, then you got 4 points. All right, so on to this vector model. I was hoping people would label them, but I guess I never really said to, so I didn't take points off if you didn't. This is a -3 vector. This is an 8 vector, and this is a 2 vector. So your equation should be -3 plus 8 plus 2 equals 7 is the answer where the last vector ended. This is worth 2 points, and you had to have the equal 7 part to get 2 points. Otherwise, you only gave me an expression, not an equation. The additive inverse of the sum, this right here is the sum, 7. The additive inverse of that is just the opposite. So the only thing I needed in this box was a -7 for 1 point. Each of these was worth 1 point. All I wanted was answers. It should have been -6, 12, -7, and 0, because -4 and -6 make -10. And when you put that with the +10, you get a 0. All right, on to the vector modeling one. There were 4 changes in the water that you had to keep track of in this problem. You got first the water dropped 4 inches, then it fell 6 inches, then it rose 3 inches, and then it rose 5 inches. And so on a vector model, that should have looked like starting from 0, we're going to go down 4, and that should have been labeled with -4. Then from that point, we're going to go down 6, and that should have been labeled as -6. Then from there, we go up, I think it's 3 next. Yeah, up 3. And that should have been labeled with a +3. And then from there, we finish it off by going up 5 more, and you should end at -2. And I'd like to see that answer circled. And so this would be worth 2 points if you did the vector model well. If there were little pieces missing or something just wasn't quite right, I might have taken a fraction of a point off, whatever. And then the other part was you had to use an equation. The equation should just be the equation that goes with this vector model. The equation that goes with it is -4 plus -6 plus 3 plus 5 equals -2. The equation itself, if you did all that right, was worth 2 points. And so altogether, this question was worth 4 points. I appreciate anybody who remembered the rule in this class is if you get asked a question in words, you answer it in words. And so if you wrote something like, the overall change was -2 or the water fell 2 inches, something like that, great, I appreciate you. But I forgot to say it before people took the quiz, and it's not technically in the instructions, so I didn't take off points if you didn't do it. The extra credit, let's come back to that after we do the subtraction page. So the subtraction page, you got to change all of the subtraction expressions to adding the inverse. So wherever you say minus is where you're going to change to plus. So I got 7 minus -10. I'm going to change that to 7 plus +10. I'll come back and do the answers. I'm going to just do my switches first. -3 minus -9. This one right here was the one that made me say minus. And so when I rewrite it, I'm going to change it to a plus. And then that -9 becomes a +9. 8 minus 12. Okay, so I will change that minus to a plus. But then that 12 needs to become a -12. And on the bottom, we got -10 minus 6. I will write -10. The minus becomes a plus, but that 6 must become a -6. All right, so the answer is 7 plus 10 is 17. -3 plus 9 is 6. 8 plus -12 is -4. And -10 plus -6 is -16. Each of these was worth 1 point. 1 point for the rewrite, 1 point for the answer. 1 point for the rewrite, 1 point for the answer. If you got them both right, then I probably just wrote +2 right in the middle between them. If you got like part of it wrong and the other part right, like let's say you got the answer wrong, I put a line kind of like that. And then maybe you only got +1 for getting the other part right. Or I might have gone like cross out here if you got this wrong. But if you somehow still got the answer right, which is weird if you did that, then you got the +1 over here. So this is 8 points total for this last page. And so all that together that we just talked about is 24 points. For the extra credit, so what this is saying is that you're adding 2 numbers that we're going to call P and Q. And the information you're given is that P is greater than 0. That's another way of saying that P is a positive number. If it's greater than 0, it's positive. And it says that Q is less than 0. That's another way of saying Q is negative. And then you're told that the absolute value of P is less than the absolute value of Q. In like simpler terms, that basically says that the positive number is the smaller one in this case. Remember, positive numbers are always bigger than negative, but we're talking about absolute value here, smaller. And the negative number is the bigger one. And so when you add a positive and a negative, and the negative number is the bigger one, then that sum comes out negative every time. And so if you wrote negative here, I give you 1 point. Then for the second part, you had to explain to me like how you know. And if I wasn't able to understand your explanation at all, or if it was just wrong, then you got to slash through it like this. If I thought your explanation was pretty good, then I give you 1 point. I reserved the 2 points for the explanations that I thought were really good, like especially thorough or clear, or maybe like showed how to think about it in multiple different ways or something. And those are the people that got +2. And I only gave a few of these out, maybe like 3 or 4 out of all students. So most people got the +1 if you did it. And so if you got the +1 for the first part of the extra credit and the +2, you add that to the 24 that the whole quiz was worth, and there was a possible 27 out of 24 was the maximum. And I think there was only maybe 2 or 3 27s out of all my students. All right, and so as usual, if you need to retake this quiz, that can happen any Tuesday or Friday after school. It's best if you talk to me about it beforehand, just because there are some Tuesdays or Fridays where I have a meeting or I have to go early for some reason. So I'm here most Tuesdays and Fridays, and it's good if you check ahead of time. All right, so what you're going to do next is you're going to do a Desmos called bumpers. Don't turn your screens toward yourselves yet. Let me talk about it for a second, and then when this video is done, then you can go ahead and get started. Let's pull it up. Here we go. So the bumpers Desmos, the idea is you have this little thing called the bumper here, this blue button looking thing. And if you add the correct number to the situation that's on the screen, then the bumper will slide sort of like a vector on the number line. And if you get it directly underneath the purple ball, the bumper will hit the ball and the star, like collecting the star or whatever. So I'll let you figure out the first couple slides, right? Now, actually, no, let me talk about the second slide real quick. The second slide is considerably harder than the first slide right off top, because now they're asking you to work in the negative direction, and your starting point is a decimal and your ending point is a decimal. So you got to figure out what vector goes there. For me, it's easier to answer question 2 if I look at question 3, because question 3 gives me like a vector that sort of represents the answer. And I can draw on the screen too. So like if I was trying to figure out how to move this bumper to get under the purple ball, I would think, okay, I'm starting at 7.5. I know I need to go -7.5 to get myself to 0. And then I would need to go -3.5 more to get to -3.5. And so if you can put those two pieces together, you got your answer, right? They start to use variables a lot in this activity. Just think your way through the variables. Like on this one, they're essentially just asking you to add the -1.6 starting point to -2.3, like they're going to slide it a little bit more, and X would just be your answer in this case. Some of the other ones, on the other hand, fractions. That's why we've been practicing fractions lately. Hopefully you feel okay with that. Yeah, so this is a tough screen here. Screen 6, you got to deal with fractions with different denominators, right? You got 4 and 8 as your denominator, so figure out your common denominator. And then the X is sort of like in the middle of these equations. And so what they're saying, like on this one here where I'm hovering my pointer, 1/8 plus something equals 3/4. And so my advice would be to try to reverse that, would be to say, okay, if I wanted to figure out what X was in this one that I just clicked blue, I would do 3/4 minus 1/8. That's the way these algebraic equations work, and we're going to practice this way more later in the school year. But if you have your variable plus something like plus 1/8, and you know the other side of the equation, 3/4, you can reverse it by subtracting. So this one, you could figure out what X was by doing 3/4 minus 1/8, and you're going to need a common denominator to do that. So similar here. When you get to screen 8, you'll do the repeated challenges. Please do at least 5 repeated challenges. I don't think these get too tough. I went through a couple of them and it didn't start giving me like super crazy fractions or anything. I don't know if it gives different things to different people or what. But at least 5. This one seems pretty straightforward. This one's pretty challenging. I would, if this one's hard for you, like ask your neighbors or maybe work together with people on this one. It's got variables and decimals and fractions and stuff in it. So there's some tough stuff in today's Desmos. I would definitely encourage you to work together. I will leave it up to the choice of the substitute teacher you have today, whether that means you're working with the people that sit just only specifically at your group, or if they'll allow you to like move around and work with other people if you want. That can be their choice. If you finish the Desmos early, please do your IXL recommendations for the rest of the period. All right, and I will see you tomorrow.